So now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to add, okay, sentiment to it. So let me talk about a few things about sentiment, but later I will pick up how I do it. I just raise the issue now, okay? And I show you a result with the remaining time. So we're gonna use a natural language processing technique to extract for print media, formal print media, okay? We use a Wall Street Journal, Thomson Reuters, and Financial Times. We zero in North American subset, not because we're only interested in that. We do it one stage at a time. When China, we're going to use Chinese media. See now, we already have, okay, data. So we have a lot of this article we already gathered, yeah? And we continue to gather every day, yeah? Newspaper are daily publications, accumulating them. So what we want to do is we want to come up with a topic, entity, sentiment. Yeah, a bit like an aspect earlier, but we want to talk about entity, IBM, credits, of what people think, what the writer think. We talk about three media, we don't treat them equal. This article in Wall Street Journal, this one Financial Times, and then we can actually weight them. So far we use an equal weight. But if you think about one media is more important than the other, or their opinion is more trustworthy, you can weight them more heavily, right? As a design issue, understand? So we're talking about article-based, but media-based. Our eventual objective is always entity, topic, sentiment. Entity are corporate entity. Sector can be entity too. Okay, but today I'm going to tell you corporate entity. I'm going to ignore sector or economy. Even in this database, Canada and US can make a difference, right? Presumably. We can actually do that too, okay? But so far, I'm just talking about entity. You can see that if you can deal with corporate entity, you can deal. Right? So I'm going to deal with a corporate entity. I'm going to zero in on credit sensitive topic. If article has an IBM, and yet talking about other things, about IBM's computer, okay, it's not important to me. It has to be credit sensitive, credit issue, okay? So you can see it's tall order. It's what been described today, the aspect things. It's even more complicated than that. Because this, you can call a credit sensitive credit as an aspect. But you don't think that the credit can be described by one word, right? Yeah. Credit risk. There are many ways of describing it. Cannot be simply in a sentence, there's one word called camera. Camera is such a refined, precise concept. Right? Credit risk, I mean. Right? So it cannot do that kind of aspect analysis. Understand what I'm saying? Okay? But it had to be entity specific. Because the sentence could be IBM, you know, something to do with HP, but its actual opinion about IBM is not HP. So the issue was discussed earlier will apply here. Because we have to know the sentiment is about what? It's not about IBM or it's about HP, you know what I mean? Okay, so when he talk about aspect, it's actually my entity. Yeah. In the jargon, sometimes people call it target. So target and aspect, it's just a semantic, right? Technically, they can be interchangeable, right? So to me, I'm talking about target, but in that language, it's actual aspect, right? You understand that? Okay, so we had to deal with that, right? And we also had to do LDA because we had to find an article. What this article is about? It's really about credit. How much about credit? Remember yesterday we was talking about LDA, right? That's what we're going to use. Then we had to do sentiment as a sentence-based sentiment. But we had to deal with aspect, which I call the entity. And we had to assemble them together in the end, right? Okay, you got it? So that's the kind of stuff we're dealing with. So basic strategy we're gonna do is we find whether it's credit related, that's article-based. Per article, we look at it. And we find the weight of whether how much is loaded on the credit card. And how we identify that, later I'll show you, right? How much, say 60%, 80%. So that allows us to single out certain articles for purpose of training. because we had to train sentiment, right? So we had to do that. In an ocean of article, not all of them are relevant to this training. Super Bowl game, people get so excited. Nothing was credit. So you have to sort of understand what I mean. And then we start talking about remove and insert. You know, this is not a jargon I created, remove. What we do, we have to take out entity because we don't want to create a topic specific about IBM. We want to create a generic topic about credit risk. Because if you have an IBM there, like for instance, IBM is not a good example. IBM is not that popular, right? As a Donald Trump. Donald Trump can become a topic, you know? You just do work. Because Donald Trump appeared everywhere for a while, right? So Donald Trump probably end up with your credit sensitive topic. So you have to remove Donald Trump, so to speak, if you, I'm just using as an analogy, but I'm not removing Donald Trump because it's not a corporation. But when it's a corporation name, I remove it and have to insert it later, okay? Okay, so few minutes. And then, okay, let me, okay, let me finish this one and then, when we pick up later, I show you the result, okay? So I haven't finished this part, but it's okay. The other one, the sentiment, we use a BERT. So BERT is a pre-trained, Google pre-trained thing. We use a, you see, is sound familiar? ABSA is aspect-based sentiment analysis, but it's built on BERT. BERT is a pre-trained system. So basically it's a positional embedding already. It's more than word embedding. The sequence, the sentence. And we don't use a single sentence, we use a sentence pair. A sentence pair based on word, on the BERT. That's how we do. We come up with sentence base. Then we aggregate to article. Then we aggregate across the media on single day. You understand what I'm saying? Then we do moving average over time. Okay. And that will be our variable go into the model as one of the P+1. We actually +2 today. Okay, I'll show you why +2. Okay, so let's take a break and I will show you the result. Then I show you how this is done. So this is like a very concrete, step-by-step kind of approach, knowing where we're going, right? Okay. Okay, so here's the data. We actually have the English and Chinese one. Today I'm talking English, so I'm not touching the Chinese one. So language were English language were Financial Times. Here's a number, okay? So you may wonder why Wall Street Journal does not have many articles because we only have a limited access to it. And these are our subscription with crawl the website. Yeah, they go down. We feel the database is increasing by the day. Yeah, okay. So that now how many is about 400,000 articles already. Okay. So, you know, if you deal with this kind of data, you also know always newer data are better, right? Better quality because electronic or digital technology much better. Earlier one. And for operating system, you actually can forget the early one, but you just have long enough, big enough data set, good enough. So it's not an issue. So now I'm going to combine this with our credit data. So I have to tell you the credit data. Our credit data is much bigger than that, but I'm limiting myself to US and Canada, North American kind of company. In our data period is much longer as well. We start over 90, but here because the sentiment covered this period, we take this period. Notice that? Okay, so November 2011 all the way to December, but to me, it's not just December. We do this paper for this, or do this research, and later it's operation system. We'll continue to move on. And number of companies, 8,000, close to 9,000 companies, and you may wonder, it doesn't have that many companies today. These are the merger acquisitions, there are something happened along the way, right? So this kind of course, we have include those. And so together, we have a number of firm months observation of close to 600,000. And why we do firm months? Building the model, we don't have to come to the day, but we do have a daily. Because you know, it's too much. Sometimes too much data is you don't get me very much, right? To some point, you should stop. And how many default? These are very important because if there's no default, if I'm supposed to decide default, there are 427 defaults in this period, yeah, the data set. And how many other corporate exits? 3,000 something. I told you earlier, but roughly 10 times. So if you don't control other exits, you're going to bias result. Yeah. other axis determine whether you see that company still. Right? Okay, so these are our default database. The sentiment, the data media database. At some stage you have to be combined, right? When I say combine, of course, not very easy. I have to go back to the media database, come up with a sentiment for a particular company on a particular day, because it's on a monthly basis, right? And insert there, right? I have to be able to create that one and insert in proper place. And then I can merge the data set. Okay, so that's the end. So I tell you the nature of data set in the very end. Okay, this is not my selection. This is just a result. Had to be, right? Because given that data period, altogether, we have a 4,000 or so company has a sentiment score ever. When I say company, I don't mean a database. That media only have 4,000. I mean they intersect with our database. That 8,000 some companies, almost 9,000 companies. Okay, also 4,000 with a sentiment. When I say with a sentiment, does not mean they have a sentiment for every day. From time to time, once this one company has sentiment. Is that clear? Okay. So how many of these sentiment are connected to default? If they're not connected to default, don't even begin, because it's not going to tell you. Right? You have to have some default related to this set of company. But you can feel comfortable, you will have to, because I tell you one secret. That is the media are biased, right? They of course biased. They don't write an article on something which is not newsworthy. Newsworthy means something spectacular best, extremely bad, extremely good, or something worth writing. So yeah, big company default, Lehman Brothers, you cannot beg them to stop. They want to write. Wild card, they just keep on writing, right? So you can expect that to happen, right? So we have how many we have? We have that many there. Okay, sentiment score connected to default. No, the one with a sentiment, so I can produce a sentiment score connected to default. Okay, you may wonder what is in the bracket 106. One is remember in the end what we're going to do is do prediction. So you are multiple prediction because one default can be predicted many times. You understand what I'm saying? If you talk about 1 year default, for instance, the 12 months away default, I'm able to make a prediction. It's actually connected to a default. 1 month later, I look at the same default that's 11 months away, still within 1 year, it's connected to default. So I can have a multiple observation from statistical point of view. Right? So at most will be 12 points attached to one score default, assuming there are sentiment number there. Understand? So that number had to be bigger than the other number. Is that clear? Likewise, the other exit, right? Because there are multiple entry. Because remember, per month, one default event, they may have sentiment a month before that, maybe doesn't, but a month before that. There could be multiple entry of a sentiment, but all about that default as a statistic goes, right? Okay, that's the way to understand. So number of firm months observation, I already told you that number, I'm just repeating here. But the following number is actually very important because they determine whether this model will have power, additional power. At least you need to have some number, right? It's 4,000 something. So that's able to separate whether sentiment has power. This is a sort of like prerequisite. It does not mean it will be significant, right? But without a number, you can just go home. Right? What's the point of doing this analysis? Because the sentiment and the default are not even connected. Okay, so that's a basic data. So let me show you the result. We have to classify data. Well, we did told you earlier, but the sentiment I didn't tell you. We put a sentiment into 5 categories. You can call it 1 to 5, but you also have to do conversion. We actually put into -2 is the worst. We think its credit risk is highest. That -2. 2 is a least credit risk. Sentiment expect. Why we do that? When argument, okay, when article does not have, it are more close to them. So neutral opinion is different from missing opinion. But in this design, missing opinion, if I treat it as 0, will be likely to be close to neutral opinion. Neutral opinion means that genuinely 0. People say neutral. I feel that the other one is a missing. We should not be naively think they are equal, right? Because the news are biased, selection bias. Okay, so therefore you must face that reality. But by doing this, you are likely to be closer. Got it? Because of the missing entry, we had to put in number. So what we did is put in 0, knowing this may be potential problem. So we'll create a compensating term, a dummy for that. So we can adjust that bias. Adjust the bias of 0 versus missing. Got it? Bias and missing may not be exactly the same. So we'll create an adjustment term. Otherwise, you will upset other things, right? Okay, that's a compensating term. That's how we deal with missing data. It's a simple trick, right? So one sentiment score variable, we had to create complementing dummy variable to take out that potential. I'm not saying it's always going to be, I'm just potential. Potential. Interestingly, result, I'll show you something. Okay, so that's what I meant by sentiment dummy. When there's a sentiment, I put a 1. It's meant to compensate for the bias in that score. Basically meaning 0 may not be neutral. 0 is not the same as missing. Okay? So that's a basic kind of design we have. Here's a result. So you can forget about rest of them. Why there's so many x? That's our existing structure of the variable. So x0 is that sentiment score. There are a lot of missing, I give it 0. The other one, x1, is when there is a sentiment score, it's 1. Otherwise, it's 0. So look at that. It's highly significant sentiment score, but dummy is not. So what is suggesting, suppose I didn't do this compensating adjustment, well, probably would not cause much of this. Understand? But you cannot afford not to, right? Only the result can tell you, then decide. So here's the statistical significance. But we do not know statistical significance actually means economic significance. Because if you tell me one number is different from the other number, as we know the statistic, right? So-called consistent test means that when sample goes to infinity, you're 100% sure, knowing the number is different from 0. It can be a very small number, still significant, but people can care less about that difference. So it had to be some economic meaning, right? So I will try to convince you, it's not just statistical significance, right? Because how I supposed to know that means what? It's statistically significant. So I'm going to show you that later. But before I do that, I show you another part. Because remember, these are 2 classes. So these are the multivariate logistic. This is not our model. I'm here just to show it to you. You see, to put into our model is even more complicated. Okay? So here just the logistic to show you. If logistic has, it's going to have. This logistic is not that great. So I'm using logistic, multinomial logistic regression, simultaneously in the 2 classes, 1 and 2. 0 is a base, right? Okay. So here is a 2. 2 is the other exit. It turns out, I was surprised, but then immediately I have intuition. It turns out dummy is highly significant. See what happened? You say when there's a sentiment score, doesn't matter the score itself. So long as the newspaper mentioning it, that company is more likely to go other exit. It's more likely to be merger acquisition happen. That's, I think, it reflects the media's selection bias. When they write about what? Newsworthy things. Oh, HP is acquiring Compaq. Understand what I'm trying to say? So this dummy somehow, original design was not for, it's for compensating. Because I should create a merger acquisition sentiment. I was creating credit sensitive sentiment. But somehow it's highly powerful, very powerful, picking up other corporate exit. Because the mere fact of being covered, it suggests they are more likely to be merger acquisition target. Isn't that interesting? Okay. That's why I say interpretable model is very interesting. With intuition, say, oh, this result is compatible or consistent with my intuition. The other one is I never thought about it. Oh, now I understand. That's the kind of insight we developed. We're very excited about it. Oh, this result now, I understand. Right? Oh, I never thought about that, right? So that's what interpretable model will do, right? So logistic regression even is not a very good modeling technique, but it's highly insightful, right? Okay. Yeah. If you throw a neural net, you don't know what's going on. You just don't know. Wow, yeah. So, and actually, if you look at the direction, it makes sense. Exactly what I was saying. If in cover, oh, it's more likely to have a higher other exit probability. Okay, so let me show you a few other slides so you can see. So far, it's a statistical significance. We're going to ask our economic significance. So I can compare probability chart. So let me show you another one first, then come back to it, because this does require a bit explanation. So here is a probability of other exit plot. So if I remove x0, x1 from the model, exactly same data set, except I do not use that sentiment tool, right, up there. Then it's blue. In this entire sample, not the half mini sample, I'm talking about that 41,000, the one with the sentiment. I'm just zeroing in on that to plot out frequency distribution. Blue is if I don't use that variable, I still use that same set for company. The LPD. The other one is once you put these two variables for that entire same set, they're different. In other words, this probability of other exit obviously being affected by this sentiment variable, with or without. Nothing more concrete than this. Do you agree? Completely different frequency distribution. And it's very pronounced, a very clear difference. It's not even sort of minor other exit. That's a caused by that dummy. Huh? Okay. Oh, this is just a number. Okay, you can see that what we have is altogether the vertical axis is a frequency count. We write it as a basis point. We also tend to write a basis point. And this is basis point. Yeah, this is a POE on the vertical on horizontal. POE is a basis point, right? Correct. POE is a basis point. We tend to write it in basis point. Now, one basis point is 1/100 of 1%. Because you talk about basis point, because these things tend to be very small, right? 1%, you write 100. So these are basis points. These are the frequency of occurrence. These are number count out of 41,000. It's just basic histogram, nothing more. Okay, is that clear now? These are POE histogram. Yeah. Yeah. POE. Yeah. Do you want to use a mic? Other people can hear.
Here the conclusion is POE change due to the sentiment dummy. Could it be that the sentiment dummy changed because of POE? The other way around. So what do you mean by that?
Remember, this is a prediction. It's a today's newspaper article. Sentiment expressed. It affect next year. Okay. It's they're clear. There's no time mix there. Okay. So it is definitely. But earlier I explained why POE is affected. Because the mere fact that newspaper covered that, it's more likely to be merger acquisition. Okay. And that's a reflection of that statistical significance translate into, if you look at this graph and say, wow, this is really meaningfully different. That's good. That's a purpose, right? To convey to you, it's not just statistical meaning. But on the default side, it's more complicated. I want to sort of explain to you. I can do same plot on default, but I chose not to. Okay, because people don't think default this way. They think in the credit rating sense. One notch change. Like for instance, from 30% default probability change to 35 default, people don't even think it's a big deal because it's a C anyway. In other words, at some area, the probability of default is very big. People don't even care the difference. They have a credit rating mindset. So I'm going to show you the result differences in the credit rating mindset. So what I have to do, I translate probability of default into rating equivalent number. Okay, we actually have some systems called PDIR 2.0, right? That is translating probability default in reference to S&P 30 years default migration history. So the PD has a credit rating interpretation. Now the fact is, every rating category, when it is a low grade, the band is very big. When it's a high grade, band is very small. Because the triple B already told you it's about 15 basis points, 1.5. Okay, 0.15%. So triple B. Then single A had to be smaller. Double A had to be smaller. You can see that it's compression there, right? So it's not a numerical number. It's how people are accustomed to the rating. Okay? Changing from A plus to A means a lot to company. So don't say, oh, it's only a few basis points. It means a lot. So that's why I say we had to think from user point of view, translating it, right? So I present to you probability of default. It's not as interesting, right? The other one, I don't have equivalent kind of way of thinking, but default I can. So what I done is I take any PD, I throw into that PDIR 2.0 to translate PD, we call PDIR, PD implied rating. So here is the plotting the change, notch changes. Because using sentiment costs 1 notch change, 2 notch change, could be downgrade, could be upgrade. So plus means upgrade, minus means downgrade, right? So we have downgrade and upgrade, 1 notch, 2 notches. Okay, you can see that. 1 notch downgrade is a lot. It's 3,000. Yeah. See that? Without changing is a majority. I'm not reporting that. That without changing doesn't mean the PD don't change. It just means they don't change in terms of rating. Earlier I already told you, 30%, 35%, it will not change rating. Okay? So I'm not reporting that as 0, right? These are notch changes. 1 notch or 2 notches. 1 notch lower, it's like asymmetrical. So in other words, this sentiment is telling you, most of this reporting sentiment actually have information that telling you something in a negative way. Again, that's reflect media bias, right? Selection bias. What's writing? And 3,000 some, it's a lot, right? You cannot say that's not important, right? You see that point I'm making? I hope I get it sort of across. So it's relevant not in a statistician sense, okay? It's really relevant in practitioner sense. Remember, this is above and beyond, okay? Suppose you didn't use sentiment, and after you have used sentiment, you will expect those one with the sentiment to have a meaningful differences, meaningful in a sense of practitioner. Got that? Okay, that's all I have to say about this. This is literally just a result, right? And I haven't told you how I'm miraculously come up with that sentiment, right? Okay, so the remaining of talk, I'm going to talk about how to create sentiment. Here's the question. Yeah, go ahead. You have to use a mic so other people can hear. Yeah, sure, I can go. Previous slide is a POE. Is that what you want? Okay. Oh, yeah, it's 2 histogram. I can also do the difference in the number, but here is a histogram in a sample of, say, 40,000. Okay, no, it has a various.
Okay. Can we go to that page, please?
Sorry. Yeah. You're talking about the histogram. Okay. This one, yes, right?
Yeah, that's the one. So, to be clear, the x-axis is the absolute
POE. It's always positive.
That is, in practitioner sense, is that basis points?
Yeah, that's a basis point. Probability of other corporate exit.
Change of basis points or absolute basis points?
No, it's absolute basis point. Because think about it, probability of being acquired over next year. Okay, what was 1,000 what tells you is 1,000 is 10 basis.
1,000 is
10 basis point. So in other words, it's a basis point we are staying. So 1,900 is at 19%.
19%.
Remember, other X is 10 times of before. I already told you. Naturally bigger.
Okay, no. So now suppose I'm a market maker for corporate bonds desk. I look at this. It tells me that the bonds that are reported in the media, I should get rid of them quickly.
Here, I'm telling you it's not that. I'm telling you, you use that compared to your original prediction, right? But this is absolute number, so it's telling you. But this one is that they're going to be those companies, but you don't know the entity. Yeah, unless you go look at the input.
So I look at this, I check.
Yeah, you can.
CDS
true.
To the market CDS curve.
Definitely. That's true. Here it's just a frequency plot. It's not telling you which company, just data this database, right? And also, it's not just necessarily different company. It's a one company could be of 2 points in a database, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, you can trace back to know that company at which time data. That's definitely can tell you how many. So now operational sense, of course, you in retrospect, go back and look at data is useless. You can never trade off. It's you turn around today to plug in today's input. When you plug in, you actually know, right? Exactly which one I'm dealing with. The thing is, if you believe in this model of sentiment, you say, suppose I didn't plug in sentiment number, I'm going to look at the probability on the blue chart. It could be one of these entry causing this histogram, right? Okay, could be 1900 basis, okay? And then suppose I use another one. It can go higher or lower. This is just a particular company can go higher or lower. But on average on database, they tend to go high. That's what. It's not entity specific here. Okay, it's not entity specific. Okay. So anyway, so this is just a sort of prelude to the sentiment analysis. I'm just convinced you this sentiment analysis actually is quite meaningful. And it's actually, I was very pleasantly surprised. If the result is insignificant, nothing, I wouldn't be surprised. Because those structural variables are very informative anyway, right? Okay, but it turned out they do. And we actually checked it, whether existing variable can actually be explaining the structural variable, the sentiment variable. Turned out they cannot. That's why. In some cases, there are some correlation for sure. There are, okay? But they are not so like you can explain them completely. That's why, right? If they have been explained by structural variable, there's no point, right? Okay. I hope you get what I'm saying. So, okay, let me show you 2 examples you may feel excited about. This is GameStop. Okay, everybody sort of pay attention to GameStop these days. Look at what that gray bar is going down. That's a sentiment score. You should refer to the right-hand side. So maximum number is -2, right? These are in average, right? Average across 3 media. Yeah. We also do 30-day moving average. Means that today I have newspaper, tomorrow I have a newspaper score. I do that moving average of 30 days. It may be today it doesn't have it, but yesterday have it. I can still do moving average. I reflect how many points in that moving average window. 30-day window could be only 10 items, could be 5 items. Okay? Because you think about sentiment, you probably don't want a single point. You want to put the average in, right? Okay. So anyway, it's a time average, it's a cross-sectional average. So first, cross-sectional average across 3 media. Then 30-day moving average. That's a number you see. Okay? The gray bar. So you can see that GameStop was a negative all quite a while. And our model, blue one is without using this sentiment. Okay? The orange one is using the sentiment. They actually at some period make a huge difference, right? But there are many other places that make no difference because there is no sentiment score. Right? So it will not make any difference. Okay, and toward the end, you can see that it actually makes not very much difference. But this model is entirely based on some parameter. Why? Because input, the sentiment is slightly negative. See that gray bar later? That's a period we are familiar with. Recent episode. What happened is, I tell you my secret wish. Okay, I was wishing, I was really want to write an article on something like, wow, there's a cooler head in formal media. Because you expect Wall Street Journal writer, those people don't get caught up in the hype. And social media gone crazy. They say, no way, you guys. Okay, I was hoping. And as you read an article, it starts to sense why this is the case. You know, I would say an article has punchline. The kind of standard technology we're doing is not reflecting punchline. Because if today I'm smart writing an article in sort of be awareness of my job security and all that, I will not go all the way out to say what I need. I will hedge my bet. Right? So the article will have a general tone of reflecting what other people say in the price has gone up and all that, and say, but you know, that's a punchline. Human will read it as completely negative. Okay? Just like people saw the nicety, all kind of nice word about you, then say, but. Your boss say you have done reasonably well, quite well, but, and then you know it's negative, right? Well, human has the ability to pick up that punchline. And I think algorithm currently we experience is not capable to pick up punchline. So if I'm able to pick up a punchline, I will say, ooh, that will go down like that as well. Okay? So certain part is a technology issue. Okay? Because the sentiment is expressed in article based on how overwhelming those kind of things are said, right? But sometimes they just say one sentence, but you know it's a punchline. Okay, so anyway, so it's a little change there. Why default is so low? Because our structural variable suggesting default is very low. Why? Because stock price has gone through the roof. So structural variable are suggesting low default. And I was hoping the cooler head will tell us the sentiment to offset that. Understand what I'm trying to say? That didn't happen. But it exposed our sentiment analysis weakness. You got that? So there's more things to be done, right? So it's like a work in progress always. So now, okay, here is another example. Here is a wildcard. This is our special report, CRI special report. Wildcard, look at the left-hand side, this is our special report, if you're interested in read. And we find the default just jump up. Wildcard actually went bankrupt, right? Our PD just jump up. And you wonder why it's not like Lehman, it's picking up long ago, it's gradually going up. That's our normal case. But it turns out, Wildcard actually committed fraud, right? It's not telling you. In other words, structural variable or misrepresenting the reality. Financial statement, financial market. You got what I'm trying to say? So therefore, our model rightly doing that is because structural variable, the translator, they're actually quite rosy still. And then, but somehow sentiment was negative in media, in this formal pre-media, okay? And here I can actually, in principle, throw into model to compute two probability, right? We said, you know what I didn't do? This is not in our North American sample. This is German. So we have to go to Germany's database, you know what I'm saying? To do that, in order to do these things. This is a German firm. But I think it's very suggestive because if you build model here, and that will be very pronounced change in the book. Right? Do you agree? Yeah, it has to, right? I just don't have a direct because I can only do so much, right? And also I can only pressure them or squeeze them so much. They're afraid of receiving my phone call. So the point is, I think it's telling you a lot of potential as incremental variable information.